Everybody that has
Coming up on KCCI 8 News Close-Up, competition in the Republican race for president. The candidates and potential candidates now visiting Iowa with the caucus season starting to ramp up. And it took a lot longer for those candidates to start their campaigns this election cycle. KCCI political analyst Dennis Goldford on why much are starting so much later. And Feenstra and the Farm Bill, the items Iowa's 4th District Congressman says farmers need in the new version that's now being debated in Washington.
This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close Up.
And a good Sunday morning to you. Thank you for joining us on Close Up. I'm KCCI Chief Investigative Reporter James Stratton. Amanda has the morning off this morning. We now have a challenger in the race for the Republican nominee for president. She's already stopped right here in the Hawkeye State. Former South Carolina governor and Donald Trump's former United Nations ambassador Nikki Haley announced her plans to run for the White House almost 2 weeks ago. Her announcement and trip here come long after Trump announced his run. We caught up with Haley in Urbandale, where she held a campaign rally last week. She told the crowd why she thinks she's the right person to retake the White House from the Democrats.
What I will tell you is this is now the time we stop complaining. Stop complaining. It's bad. We know it. Now let's start to fix it. So how do we fix it? Let's talk about the solutions, because I think we're better if we talk about solutions than problems, right? So the first thing we do is we realize that Washington, D.C. has a spending problem, and they need to be put on a diet. There is no more spending. If I, as governor of South Carolina, can balance a budget, if you can balance your home budgets, we have got to get D.C. to balance a budget. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. These earmarks have to stop. I don't care what they're for. You can't have $12 million for a baseball stadium in New York, $15 million for New Jersey to get the World Cup, $6.5 million for golf courses in Colorado. There was another couple of million for a hip-hop museum in New York. All of this has to stop. We don't have enough to buy groceries. You can't turn around and have our money, our taxpayer dollars, going to things like this. And if our entire budget, 15% of it is interest, quit borrowing money. When you look at the inflation situation, you see how much inflation has gone up? That's when you go back and you say, let's stop buying things and let's start manufacturing in America, just like we're doing in South Carolina. And if you really want to help American families and you really want to reduce inflation, open up the energy sector. We need to be exporting as much liquefied natural gas as we can. All of those things will make a difference. Then when it comes to education, we have to go back. In South Carolina, I made a point to tell the people of South Carolina, if a child can't read by 3rd grade, they're 4 times less likely to graduate high school. So we passed a bill that said any child that couldn't read by 3rd grade, we were holding them back. We were doing reading remediation. We included their parents. We did summer school, and we got them back on track. That should be applied around this country until we can make sure all of our kids can read. And we need to make sure we never close schools ever again, no matter what. Let's get vocational programs back in high school, and let's teach our kids they don't have to go to college. There are great jobs in America that they can make things. And when it comes to our universities, if they want to keep taking Chinese money, then they don't get American money. When it comes to security on our streets, you know, a lot of it is street crime. And you know what happens with street crime? If you have the backs of your law enforcement officers and you let them do their job, you take care of half the problem. The only other thing is we need to give them a raise and thank them for what they do. We need to listen to our Border Patrol. We need to go back to the Remain in Mexico policy. We need to make sure that we do what I did in South Carolina. We passed E-Verify, Arizona-style E-Verify in South Carolina, which said no business could ever hire anyone that was here illegally. Those jobs are for Americans. If anyone wants a job, they have to be here legally. When we did that in South Carolina, all of them stopped coming to South Carolina because there was no jobs. And we made businesses prove it. They had to go through the E-Verify system, and if they got caught, they got punished. We have to start taking this seriously. We are a country of laws. The second you stop being a country of laws, you give up everything this country was founded on. So we need to secure the border. We need E-Verify. We need to let the world know we'll happily welcome you, but you have to prove that you deserve to be here, and we need to do it on merit. Only then will that happen. But the only way we're really going to get it done, we got to have term limits in Congress. We've got to have term limits in Congress. We need to have competency tests for elected officials over the age of 75. We do. That's not being disrespectful, that's transparency. Elected officials work for the people, not the other way around.
That was a bit of Haley's speech in Urbandale earlier last week. Nikki Haley, now one of 3 Republicans to officially enter the race for president. Donald Trump, of course, the first to enter the race last year, not long after the midterm elections. Biotech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy filed his candidacy with the Federal Election Commission Tuesday. He was also in Urbandale Thursday to speak before the Polk County GOP. But the race for the Republican nomination for president is just getting started. Several other potential candidates are considering a run. One of them paid a visit to Iowa last week. That man there, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, in Des Moines Wednesday. I caught up with Scott when he was asked if he's any closer to making a decision about running for president.
You were here a few years ago and people said, are you going to run for president?
Yes,
You said
ma'am.
You're not even going to run for president of your
Homeowner Association. Yeah.
Have you changed your answer?
Well, the Homeowner Association, they've already said no. So I'm working on that part of the answer. But I am here because I want to hear what folks here in Iowa want to hear from elected officials. The Faith in America Tour really is about reestablishing the focus on faith in each other, faith in our future, and faith in this amazing nation. So as I have a chance to speak around the state and get feedback, it will inform and educate me on how to accomplish the mission that I really believe is the most important part of my life.
Senator Scott, if you are potentially considering a 2024 run, what are your thoughts on the RNC potentially requiring a loyalty pledge?
Well, the most important thing I can do is to focus on the Faith in America Tour, because bottom line is, as I hear more from the constituents here in Iowa and around the country, it will give me more information on what to do next.
As you think about a run, can you update us on what kind of timeline you're looking at for making a decision?
Well, truly the Faith in America Tour is the most important part of the process. Let me be more clear. Worrying about the title of the position is secondary to understanding the importance of the mission and distilling the components of that mission and how I can accomplish the mission of restoring hope and creating opportunities for all Americans. I was blessed to be raised by a strong, powerful single mom, and the best thing I can do is make sure that single moms of today have the best and brightest future for their kids and for themselves.
Senator Tim Scott at a Catholic school on Des Moines' South Side. Still to come on Close Up, candidates getting into the Republican race for president later than in elections past. We asked KCCI political analyst Dennis Goldford about what happened to finally get more candidates to throw their name into the ring. And railroad safety, what Iowa 4th Congressman Randy Feenstra says Congress should do after train crashes in both Ohio and Nebraska. Well, welcome back to Close Up. Former President Donald Trump announced his bid for the White House way back on November 16th, a crisp fall air there. It almost took 3 more months for another candidate to announce, and it came from his own UN ambassador, Nikki Haley there, here to explain why and to answer our other political questions that we may have. We have a lot of them. Dennis Goldford, thanks for being here today.
Sure.
The first question is probably the elephant in the room, no pun intended. What took so long?
The elephant in the room. Obviously, Donald Trump and his base basically thinks of him as an incumbent president, unfairly, in their view, denied his second term. Of course, that's been disputed and debunked by lots of people. But in that sense, it's rare that other members of a party, absent a scandal, run against an incumbent. So you've had a lot of people in the Republican Party very hesitant at this point to announce that they will run against him.
In 2016, we saw, if we want to use an analogy, a flood of candidates here in Iowa at this time. I'd call it basically a trickle now. Can you compare the two?
Well, it's precisely that. There was no incumbent president on the Republican side in 2016. That was the end of President Obama's second term. And typically, if you're the out party, if you don't control the presidency, unless there's a single dominating figure, it tends to be a free-for-all for people who think they ought to run and be the nominee. There's an old saying that every senator looks in the mirror every morning and looks down Pennsylvania Avenue and says, if that guy can do it, I can do it.
Sure. Well, we're getting more people, their name in the ring, that say they can do it. Nikki Haley, Ramaswamy also back here in Iowa. Do we expect more soon?
We probably do, because of course we know that whatever the Democrats have done with the Iowa caucuses on their side, the Republicans still see the Iowa caucuses as the first important event in their nomination process. So you want to show up here and basically, as I've said for years, every candidate has the same opponent, and that opponent's name is expected. You want to do better than expected. You don't want to do worse than expected. So all these other candidates face a series of low expectations, perhaps other than Ron DeSantis, and they want to see if they can exceed that to give themselves a bump toward the next nominating event.
I want to look at now and the next 6 months through the lens of people who maybe are on the cusp of announcing. We had Asa Hutchinson on this show. You just heard from Tim Scott, maybe announcing, maybe not. Can you put, I guess, what it looks like through their eyes as they come here for quote unquote listening tours and what they hope to gain from coming here now before they announce?
Right. Well, they're certainly gaining exposure. Again, I mean, remember what put the caucuses on the map. Jimmy Carter left the governor's mansion in Georgia in January of 1975 and basically camped out here for 12, 14 months below the radar. And he got to be known by people and showed up at caucus night and made an impression because he came out of nowhere. A lot of these Republicans now know about the elephant in the room, former President Trump, and the other elephant, Ron DeSantis, and they're hoping to, again, make a name for themselves, get some support from activists, and make a showing that's a lot stronger than anybody would have thought on the actual caucus night.
Oh, they call them listening tours. What do they hope to listen from the people of Iowa? We have a lot to say, us Iowans.
Right. Well, their listening tours is often having Iowans listen to them. We have to bear that in mind. But sure, they want to connect with the voters. I mean, the good thing about the Iowa caucuses, whatever the criticisms might be, is that they force politicians, potential candidates, to talk to people as real people and not simply campaign props for photo ops. So they get the chance to hear what's on the minds of, in this case, Republicans who are concerned about various sorts of issues, most of whom support Trump, many don't though, and they want to just establish a baseline for themselves to know where they should go in terms of a campaign and issues.
Sure, we got at least one Pizza Ranch visit. We're going to get, I'm sure, many more across the state of Iowa. I want to talk about the other side of things. The Democrats were stripped of their status, but I do still want to talk about the candidacy of the incumbent, the other elephant in the room, President Joe Biden. What is the hang-up, I guess, if you are the incumbent president, on announcing that you're running for re-election, if you're announcing that you're running for re-election?
Well, some people have suggested that he really hasn't made up his mind yet. The problem is, if you're an incumbent and you could run for another term, as soon as you say you're not, you become an instant lame duck. And there are almost 2 more years left in the Biden presidency, so you don't want to be a lame duck for 2 years. But at the same time, again, you want to get out there, if you're not Joe Biden, among the Democrats, and get some recognition, get some attention, just in case President Biden decides not to run. You want to say, hey, sailor, I'm available. And it doesn't hurt them to get out there and do that.
And does it hurt the Democratic Party if President Biden has, one foot in the boat, one foot out of the boat in terms of announcing that he's running?
Well, the problem for the Democrats is if Biden doesn't run, whatever his virtues or flaws, Democrats have a real problem. They become almost more of a free-for-all than you find on the Republican side. There's no dominant Democrat who's an alternative to Biden, the way perhaps right now Ron DeSantis is a dominant Republican, is an alternative to Donald Trump. So the Democrats, again, are left, as you suggest, in a kind of wait-and-see situation until they hear something from President Biden.
Okay, really appreciate your time
Sure.
being here, and of course your expertise throughout the decades that you've been here on KCCI. Another caucus cycle, good to enter it with you. Thanks for being
Thank you.
here. Still to come on Close Up, protecting farmland. Two issues Congressman Randy Feenstra says Congress must tackle to protect Iowa land ownership. Well, welcome back to Close Up. Iowa's 4th District Congressman Randy Feenstra has been touring his district, getting input from farmers and others about the proposed 2023 Farm Bill. I talked with Feenstra about the bill, the use of eminent domains potentially to build pipelines across the state of Iowa, and railroad safety in the light of what happened in East Palestine, Ohio, and in Nebraska. It's the time once every 5 years we talk about and we re-up the Farm Bill, basically. What changes or non-changes do you want to see in it this time around from the 2018 version now to the 2023 version?
This is such a big deal. Once every 5 years we get to do the Farm Bill, and it affects Iowa. I mean, all our producers, there's so many things that are in it. And talking with my 36 counties and all my producers, the big thing is the safety net called insurance. We have to make sure that with input prices skyrocketing right now, that insurance is still covering that cost of putting in that crop. And we saw it just last year, where we had a significant drought all over Iowa, and a lot of insurance was paid out. So that's one of the big issues we're looking at. Then also conservation programs like no-till planting, cover crops, and then research to our institutions, making sure that we're looking for the next new way of doing things when it comes to agriculture. I mean, these are some of the key components. And then finally, energy. We have 42 ethanol plants and 11 biodiesel plants in Iowa. That's #1 in the country. So we want to do everything possible to make sure that we continue to promote ethanol and biodiesel and make sure that it's used around the country.
I'm going to get to the ethanol plants here with a separate question, but a part of that bill is SNAP benefits. It's a massive bill. Iowa in the state legislature have talked about I guess reducing some SNAP benefits. Do you see that on a federal level?
I think there's going to be discussion, not maybe reducing. 82% of the money that goes into the Farm Bill goes to the SNAP program or goes to the Food Assistance Program. You know, we would like to see some requirements when people get food assistance, whether that be work requirements, educational requirements, whatever it might be. And this is going to be a very big topic. It was 5 years ago in the Farm Bill, and it will be again this year.
With the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, obviously calling on a national response. Do you believe there should be a congressional investigation into what happened in Ohio?
I'm calling for oversight. There's got to be oversight. I was really concerned that the head of transportation, Buttigieg, took 16 days to get there. You know, when these things happen, and we've had them, I've had 2 of them in my district just the last 2 years. We just had one in Nebraska. So I think there's got to be oversight. We've got to understand why this is happening and what's going on and how do we prevent it for the future.
There seems to be talk about electronically pneumatic brakes or a braking system that may not have prevented this crash from happening, but could have prevented the severity of it. Should Congress look at a rule that includes those on train cars?
You know, we have to look at all things. I mean, we had this years ago when we had several airplane crashes and having the FFA look at different things. I think this same thing applies, is that we have to have the Transportation Board and we have to have Congress investigate and say, what do we look at and what do we do to prevent some of these tragic accidents from occurring?
I want to switch gears a little bit. Your colleague Zach Nunn found out that some of his information was stolen as part of, from the U.S. Air Force as part of, according to his team, a targeted breach. What is your reaction to that?
Well, again, it's very concerning when you have military secure information of our troops, of people that have served in the military, all of a sudden gone public. Right? That should fear all of us. That should be a real concern. And again, we have to get to the bottom of this, and right away.
I promised to talk back about corn and ethanol and whatnot in regards to that. We have a trade deficit with China. What needs to happen to reduce that trade deficit? It went up $30 billion last year to now $382 billion.
This is a massive trade deficit. All right? We import from China $538 billion. We export to them only $131 billion. So we have a huge disparity here. We had the phase one trade deal that was successful, and since then we have done very little. We've got to get it on a level playing field here. And there's a lot of things going on with China right now, obviously buying our farmland, which is a real concern, seeing a lot of our research and technology stolen and taken back, and obviously the balloon overhead. You know, we have to understand what they're doing, and we have to lead. And for me, it seems like we're leading from behind.
You mentioned China and the other issues that we may be facing. You recently introduced a bill to stop companies with Chinese ties to the Communist Party from buying farmland. The state of Iowa seems to be introducing some sort of other bill that allows foreign entities to buy 1,000-acre plots for manufacturing, doesn't mention China specifically. Do you support something like that here in the state? And how does that differ from what you're trying to accomplish?
Well, my bill says we have to know why foreign countries, foreign interests are buying our land. We saw it in Grand Forks, North Dakota, where a Chinese communist company bought a lot of land right next to a military base. Right? This is national security, it's food security. I believe that Iowa land belongs to the Iowa farmer. If we want to continue generation to generation in farming, we got to keep the land being bought by our farmers. And that's why I'm so passionate about this issue.
On top of that, farmland and another important topic when it comes to eminent domain, there are plans to build 2 carbon capture pipelines that'll snake straight through your district, connecting to North Dakota. Do you support the use of eminent domain for those projects?
Well, I'll just tell you this, is that we have 42 ethanol plants. We have 11 biodiesel plants, as I noted. All right? If we don't have ethanol and biodiesel, the corn price drops to $2.42 a bushel. Every other row of corn in Iowa goes to an ethanol plant. So we have to do everything we can to make sure that they're sustainable. They're a huge economic engine, all right? But we also have to protect landowners. So there's this balancing act that needs to occur.
And when push comes to shove, I know that the state makes this decision, but do you support the use of eminent domain for them?
Yeah, I tell you what, it's a state decision. I promote the fact that the private company needs to work with the private landowner and get an agreement.
Okay, so work it out ahead of time and not have to get to that issue?
Exactly, work it out.
Well, that does it for our time on KCCI 8 News Close Up. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you right back here next Sunday. Have a great rest of your weekend.